Hello and welcome to another episode of the PropSwap podcast. We are your hosts, Ian Epstein.
And Luke Pergande.
And we are also the founders of PropSwap, the first marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got another great episode for you. We will go over some big NFL sales this week, talk about the updated MVP race, the NBA in-season tournament. But first, I thought we would start with your recent travels. Luke, you got back home today. You were in Dallas over the weekend in person for Sunday Night Football, Eagles, Cowboys. As has been well documented on this podcast from your time in Jersey, you are you've been adopted. You're an adopted Eagles fan. And so, I just thought I'd first just start with what were your thoughts about the stadium, the atmosphere, the lead up to the game. Obviously, we all saw what happened during the game, but just kind of what were your thoughts about the overall, kind of day there?
Yeah, super fast growing city. Dallas is it's massive. I mean, when they say everything's bigger in Texas, like Dallas is just so spread out, even more spread out than LA, probably the most spread out city in America. Toyota just moved the US headquarters there. PGA Tour's headquarters is there. I mean, just massively growing city. Of course, got some barbecue, really good food scene, certainly if you like barbecue. But fast forward to the stadium, it's again the new model these days is build the stadium about an hour outside of the urban center, which Boston did that with the Patriots, and Jerry certainly has done that with the Cowboys. But really nice stadium. They have the same situation as Philly Live, which is a big food court turned into like a giant open bar right next to the stadium, where it's 7 different restaurants plus 7 different bars all under the same roof that everyone kind of drinks at. And Des Bryant had a big tailgate at it. So that's all great. And the stadium aesthetically is incredible, but they made some mistakes in building this thing. So we had excellent seats. We were the 5th row in the end zone, and we walked in from Texas Live, and AT&T does not have a concourse. They try to get so much standing room only people into AT&T, but they don't want those people going through like the club levels. So what happens is people like myself who had really good seats, but we didn't have club access. It's different. 5th row is not club. There's club for the suites. They made us go up 4 flights of stairs, no elevator, maybe the elevator, but we're well able. We're not going to take an elevator and other people need it. 4 flights up, walk around the stadium. We went through total gridlock in the 4th floor because everyone was trying to get to their seats. Literally wasn't moving 30 minutes before kick for probably 15 minutes. Like if you have claustrophobia, you're in trouble. 4 flights down, back down, and then to our seats. Like literally there is no concourse to get to the 5th row. So stunning that AT&T would do that. And I always applaud SoFi in LA because you never feel crowded at SoFi. It's always open. You're never rubbing elbows with anyone else. No bathroom lines, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I like SoFi so much. AT&T was the exact opposite. Like the engineering on that and the projected flow of traffic was totally miscalculated.
Yeah. A couple things. Yeah. So one, I mean, there's that kind of classic funny meme or whatever of them of like opening the doors at Cowboy Stadium and then a rush of people running in and that's all due to standing room only, right? So it's securing a spot there. So when you go to
that's the problem. That's the problem. Is that if you have seats, you're like, what the hell is this? Like, I don't want to deal with this nonsense.
And so like when you want to go get drinks or use the bathroom, like are there concessions and bathrooms like semi near your seats?
So yeah, it is siloed, but if you enter from Texas Live, which is the most popular, area, granted I could have walked entirely around AT&T to get to the other side maybe, but there literally isn't a concourse to get from one end zone to the other. I've never been to a stadium like that in my life.
Yeah. On some tickets, they do say like enter through this gate or that gate, and usually they're just trying to help you, but it sounds like it was more than just help. Like it's pretty needed to do that.
Totally. And then lastly, the weather. I had no idea that Dallas gets that cold. I figured that it's Texas, like it would never get below 55. I mean, it was 40. It was
Yeah.
40 degrees.
Well, I mean, I forget. I think it was the same Super Bowl. I mean, so when you were saying about cramming as much standing room only, that reminded me how there was I forget what the matchup was, but there was a Super Bowl there not too long ago, and I think it was going to be the first Super Bowl at that stadium, and they tried putting in like temporary seats, like temporary stands, to fit more seated, so you could sell more seated tickets, and before game time, it was ruled like it was unsafe. And so there were a bunch of people who thought they had paid for tickets and basically told, hey, your seat doesn't actually really exist. And so sorry, like you're not going to the Super Bowl. But I believe that was the same one that also, there was like a freeze. It was super cold there. And yeah, the entire Super Bowl descended on Dallas and not realizing it was going to be that cold. So, and then about the being an hour outside of town. I mean, I think anyone who's a football fan knows that the stadium is technically in Arlington. Now, how close or far Arlington is from the city, I would have no idea unless I did that trip, because I've never been to Dallas, and so I'm always curious about your thoughts. I mean, it's Dallas proper, it from what I've heard is a very upscale, or just it's not exactly what you think of when you think of like Texas cowboy type of thing. It's a very upscale city, yeah.
It's a hybrid of both. There's a lot of cowboy hats, a lot of pickup trucks, but I went to a country club to pitch a couple prospective investors on Saturday. I mean, obviously, anyone that doesn't think there's money in Dallas is foolish. There's tons of cash, but it's a little bit between, upscale, Louis Vuitton, all the designer stores, and cowboy. It's kind of like, those two had a baby. That's what Dallas is like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know better than I do. I mean, don't get fooled if someone's wearing a cowboy hat. Don't be fooled that cowboy hat didn't cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So, yeah. All right. Well, that's and then obviously, the result was not what you were hoping for, but like, was the in stadium. I mean, what about the screen? Like, was the in stadium experience good, or
barely used it, fifth row? I mean, again, if you didn't, aesthetically, everything looks amazing. Like the screen looks big and clean, and the stadium from the outside looks great, and like everything looks well done. But once you actually, it's like using it, it's like using a car that looks really nice, but like once you drive it, it kind of sucks. Like they have some wrinkles to iron out in terms of traffic logistics inside the stadium. But yeah, in-seat experience, nice. You can get your concessions ordered to your seat. But yeah, I mean, and obviously packed. Like it was absolutely slammed for an Eagles Cowboys game. But yeah, I would say the standing room only thing, while obviously great for Jerry, he gets to sell a bunch of standing room only tickets and get $100, maybe far more for that matchup. It's to the deficit of people who have some good seats. But yeah, really nice stadium. Other than that, it's well done. It felt like SoFi maybe 10 years prior. Like a lot of glass, and it looks nice. How's your weekend?
Yeah. My weekend was good. So yeah, I was in Las Vegas last week for some business, but the business was done by Thursday afternoon, and so Thursday night, I went to the semifinal, the second semifinal of the NBA in-season tournament. Lakers Pelicans. That game was also a blowout. It was like a 13-point game at half. Pelicans had the lead a couple times the first half, and then I forget exactly the third quarter score, but that game was over within the first couple minutes of the third quarter. But super cool to be there. It was like it had all-star game vibes in terms of like the number of like media and former players, and you got KG and Dr. J sitting courtside next to each other, and it was a really kind of I've been to a couple all-star games before, so it reminded me of that. But the friend I was with had never been to an all-star game, so it was really cool for him to see. Kind of we also had really good seats. Fifth row center court, and so it was cool for him to see all the action. I was able to meet Adam Silver, talk to him for a little bit. May or may not have pitched him on PropSwap, which he seemed intrigued by. The other cool thing was that the had darked out, like blacked out kind of like the stands, and the court was super lit up. So like this is how Lakers games are, at least from TV, because I've never been to a Lakers game, but like the stands are super dark, and then the court kind of lights up like a stage, and they had that, which was really cool. But my
T-Mobile,
one kind of
T-Mobile Arena, of course.
this is T-Mobile, which they never, I've been to basketball games before. They never do that for any other basketball games they've had there. So this was obviously a special thing that they decided to do, and I wish honestly they did it for more games, because it makes it feel like the game itself is like kind of more of a show, like it's on center stage, like a play. One of my kind of takeaways, though, which I was shocked when I learned it, the first semifinal game tipped off at 2 p.m. local time on Thursday, which kind of baffled me. All this lead up, I thought the NBA did a great job. The players obviously were caring about it, and I wanted to go to both games. I had tickets to both games, but I wasn't able to get to T-Mobile by 2 p.m. on a Thursday. And so, yeah, that was kind of frustrating. And one of the reasons I assume was that because they sold each game as its own individual ticket. So they cleared out the stadium, after game one, which obviously they need more time to do. But still, I thought, it's Vegas, they ran an F1 race at 1 a.m. You could have started that second game later. So that'd be one of my pieces of feedback.
Yeah, so I'm going to the Indy Classic this weekend, which of course is our alma mater, Arizona, number one team in the country. Woo woo, playing Purdue, and they also are doing like a double header type thing. But the first game is a joke. It's like Butler. It's
yeah. Well,
I'll look it up. But yeah, it's like nobody cares about that game. It's like number one team versus number two team, Arizona versus Purdue. But like the game before that, it's like who cares?
Right. And any, March Madness, Final Four, whatever, anytime that you have a doubleheader like that, they sell one ticket for both games. Now, you may notice on March Madness, when the second game is the bigger one, like the crowd can seem a little, dead because the most tickets have been sold for the second game. Well, but guess what? The crowd was also dead, in this instance, because no one is able to show up to a game at 2 p.m. On a weekday. Yeah. So yeah, that'd be one of the thing. So yeah, that was
wrap up the doubleheader and we'll come back to Ball State versus Indiana State. It's like okay. who cares? But,
yeah, well, it's the Indy Classic. So yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And then flew back to I would have stayed through the weekend, but I flew back to Denver on Friday because I had a very early morning on Saturday. I joined what's called the Denver Children's Foundation here. Basically, it's a group of 100 guys. It's all male, but there are other organizations that are all female too. I want to make that clear. I think there's reason before, but it's not because like women can't do the same thing. I just think these things are generally segregated by sex. But 100 volunteers, business leaders who volunteer their time to raise money for basically a fund that then gets dispersed to Denver area nonprofits that focus on children. And this past Saturday was our Christmas for Kids event where we each picked up a kid at 5:30 in the morning, took him to a Target that was open, before it opened to the public, and they had a set amount of money to spend on gifts for their parents, their siblings, and so it was a really cool experience to just walk the aisles with someone and get them gifts that they would never be able to afford themselves, and helping them think about what would their younger brother like, or what would their mom like. And so it was organized chaos in that Target. 100 volunteers plus kids plus some of their parents tagged along, but worked out great. Santa came in on a helicopter and handed out some more gifts. So it was a really cool morning on Saturday.
When you say came in, helicopter landed outside, obviously.
Yeah, no, but a legitimate helicopter landed in the parking lot of Target, and then Santa walked out, and then there was like a bunch of other like gifts and shopping carts that kids could run and grab and take photos with Santa. So it was a really cool.
Incredible.
And this group has been working very hard over the last couple of weeks and months to put this event on, raise money for it, and so it was the culmination of a lot of work by a lot of people who, like I said, just volunteer their time. No one, we don't get anything out of this other than just helping helping the kids of the city.
Got it. Incredible. And, I'm sure that the numbers will trickle in, but obviously with the growth of Denver, I think that'd be the best year ever. So it's awesome. Congrats to you. Congrats to DCF. You made a lot of kids holidays.
Yeah, no, it's great. And, the group definitely brings a competitive aspect to the fundraising, which is interesting, right? So, there's leaderboards for who's doing the best, and then there's leaderboards for who's doing the worst. And, you work your tail off, obviously, for the kids, but also there's an aspect of like, well, I don't want to be, called out for being one of the bottom people. So, thank you to you, Luke, for donating. PropSwap donated as well. Both of our families donated. So thank you to you and your family and anyone else out there who's listening who I may have reached out to. So yeah, it was a great event.
Bravo. I'm tearing up over here.
Yeah. And so that was so interesting weekends for both of us. And so I had some more stuff on the in-season tournament, but really what I just want to talk about was just I think it was generally a success. And the thing that kind of stood out to me was the fact that the Indiana Pacers, who reached the final of it, they were 50-1 before the tourney started, and then they got all the way to the finals and lost. They were plus 150 ahead of that game. So there's another example of a way you could have gotten in on a long shot future, and then really with just a month, it matured from 50-1 to plus 150. And so, and then same thing on the MVP front. Tyrese Halliburton, the Pacers' new kind of superstar, he was 40-1 to win the MVP before the tournament, and then he was same odds as the Pacers, plus 150. Because if the Pacers had won, it was his MVP to lose. So I think this was great. I think it was a success. I think they'll make some updates and changes that will only make it better. And so overall, it's as someone, Luke, who doesn't follow the NBA until football is really over, did this tournament kind of get you to pay attention to NBA just a little more, at least during it?
It did. Yeah, we were talking. I went this weekend to our Eagles buddy Gabe. We were just talking about the Pacers and like obviously Halliburton, and looking at the futures odds this morning. Like they went, and obviously this is partially a factor of them winning games, regardless of the in-season tournament. But the Pacers have won from 250-1 to 100-1 to win the NBA Finals in 3 weeks. So I'm sure, like I said, it's part of their success in the regular games, but it's a bunch of people watching this tournament who are like, damn, like this team's actually way better than we thought they were going to be this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not just like, so they beat the Bucks in the semis, and it's not just beating the Bucks in any other regular season game. It's beating the Bucks when the Bucks are trying their hardest. Like, the Bucks really want to win that game, and so totally. Come playoff time, yes, it's best out of 7. You can't just win one game, but I think it does show like when it's best versus best, the Pacers can hang. And so will that translate to winning 4 out of 7? Only time will tell. But I think it is a good indication of a team like the Pacers or the Kings. Did well as too. I think it's a little good barometer. But moving on, I wanted to switch gears, talk a little NFL. Some big sales in the AFC on Monday morning. This is just a guess, but with the Chiefs losing yet again, it is turning the AFC kind of in flux right now, and teams like the Ravens and the Dolphins, I think, have now risen way more to the top. So the first sale I wanted to bring up was before the season, a PropSwap customer placed a $178 bet on the Ravens to win the AFC at 13-1 odds. If Baltimore wins the conference, this ticket will collect $2,500. On Monday morning, that ticket sold for $667. So that's a close to $500 profit for the seller. And those were odds of plus 275 for the buyer, who paid $667. And that's compared, those odds of plus 275 on PropSwap is compared to plus 260 at FanDuel and plus 250 at DraftKings. And so Ravens are currently the AFC favorite. We're recording this before the Dolphins Monday night game. Are you a believer in Lamar and the Ravens to reach the Super Bowl, or do you think they will fizzle out in the playoffs?
We've talked about this before. I just don't trust their offensive firepower enough if they get down to a team like Buffalo or Kansas City or Miami. It wins regular season games. You can grind teams out. The rushing attack just forces teams to kind of crumble by the end of the game. But I just am concerned that if they go down 13-0 or, obviously 14-0, even 17-7, like it concerns me that they just don't have a stretch the field type offense. So yeah, I would have sold that ticket, especially after, Chiefs kind of having some weakness over the weekend.
Yeah. I'm more bullish on the Ravens than you are. They were down late against the Rams, and scored when they had to force overtime. I think Zay Flowers is that kind of stretch the field receiver that they may not have had before. Obviously the Mark Andrews injury has definitely hurt them, but I just think they are the most well-rounded team in the AFC, and I think the second best team, or you may say the first best team, is the next team we're going to talk about, the Miami Dolphins. Another sale we had on Monday morning. Before the season, a PropSwap customer placed a $150 bet on the Dolphins to win the Super Bowl at 35 to 1 odds. If this ticket wins, it will collect $5,400. On Monday morning, the ticket sold for $600. So that was a $450 profit, or a 300% ROI for that seller. And then meanwhile, the buyer received odds of 8 to 1 on the purchase, and that's compared to 7 to 1 at FanDuel and 6 to 1 at DraftKings. So again, another example of where the seller made several $100s in profit, and the buyer got the best odds in the country. Are you more bullish on the Dolphins than you are on the Ravens?
Yeah. And I would, just wrapping up the Ravens conversation, their defense is incredible. So like, if there's any saving grace that can, obviously if you keep the other team to less than 13, then you can grind them out. So they got a shot. I don't hate the Ravens. I just am concerned about their deep ball threat. But love the Dolphins. I think they should roll tonight against the Titans. But yeah, just their defense is concerning. It's good. So 9th in total yards, Dolphins defense, 8th in rushing yards, and then points they're 20th. So like good holding teams in terms of offensive yardage, but they give up the 12th most points. So concerning. They need to figure that part out. This would be one I would sell the Ravens AFC, but with the Dolphins, I would sell it and then take half those profits and reinvest in the Dolphins, just because they're low single digit. And I still think the Chiefs would beat the Dolphins in a playoff game. I trust the Chiefs more overall.
Yeah. So you were talking about the Ravens being reliant on certain things, right? They have to kind of like play from the lead. I think that the Dolphins are too reliant on the passing game, right? Now, granted, Tyreek Hill is probably going to set the record for most receiving yards in the season. So like they've managed to figure out ways to, because I'm sure defensive coordinators are game planning to stop him, and they keep figuring out ways. But I do think come playoff time, you're going to be, some defense is going to force them to run the ball or get the ball to other receivers besides Tyreek Hill. And I just don't trust them that they can win when that game plan's not working. And not to mention Jalen Phillips, who a lot of people say is their best defensive player. He's done for the year. And so I'm way more bullish on the Ravens than I am on the Dolphins. In fact, I think Ravens are my pick right now. I think to win the AFC. The Chiefs have done nothing to show me that they're the same team as last year. So again, I would still have sold the Ravens ticket, but I definitely would have sold the Dolphins ticket at 8 to 1 odds. I think this is a perfect time to sell high. So more to come here, but the AFC race is extremely interesting versus the NFC race, where it really seems like at this point it's a it's kind of a 2-pony race. I know you don't want to hear this. I'm sure you're thinking it's still 3 teams, but all season long, I've been kind of saying I thought the Eagles were, I think, overrated, right? I was saying swap Jalen Hurts MVP, swap the Eagles. I think it's between the 49ers and the Cowboys, which leads me to the next topic I want to talk about, which is the MVP race. The 2 favorites right now are the quarterbacks of those 2 NFC teams I just mentioned. Dak Prescott is plus 150 favorite to win MVP, followed by Brock Purdy at plus 200. I mean, if I would have told, forget before the season, if I would have told you that a month ago that those were the top 2 favorites, you probably would have said I was crazy, right? No Hurts, no Mahomes. Lamar is, in the mix, but not really. Tua is in the mix, but not really. What are your thoughts right now on the MVP race?
Yeah, you could have got both those guys at 20-1, like less than a month ago, Dak and Brock Purdy. So, as we always talk about this award, there is so much recency bias with these voters. So, do not think that just because it's a quarterback's award nine times out of 10. Don't think because some quarterback had a bad first half of the season that he's not going to be able to make a run in the second half and win this thing. So just yet again, it pays dividends to be checking those odds every weekend through the end of the whole season. Literally, this thing could flip in week 18. So, yeah, you're never out of this thing. It's a quarterback's award. It's silly. I talk about this on ESPN Chicago every week. We kind of analyze the top options. It is silly that receivers, Tyreek Hill, like you said, now 2,000 yards, or Christian McCaffrey might have 20 touchdowns. Like, it is silly that we're not even debating that. It's like we're not even involving Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill in this award. So that part is silly, I think. But given those 2 options, I will lean Brock. I don't think the Cowboys are that good. The Eagles look terrible on Sunday night. I'm not taking anything away from Dallas, but obviously Philly already beat them once, so they're 1-1 in a matchup. I don't trust the Cowboys enough. CeeDee Lamb's too inconsistent. Dak is fine, but he really didn't make that many good throws last night. The receivers were wide open. Philly's DBs stink. So I would trust Brock over Dak.
Yeah, I would pick Dak over Brock. I mean, the online, discussion of Brock always, I mean, and it's incorrect, but it's always just about like how, it's the yards after catch, he just hits Debo on a 10-yard slam, then he takes it to the house. And so, I, short of that somehow changing in the next 4 weeks, I just don't think, Brock is going to be able to get over the hump in terms of surpassing Dak. Again, do not sleep on Lamar. They've got more primetime games coming. Totally. And so I would still say do not sleep on Lamar. I would, you can go ahead and sleep on Tua, I think. But to your point about the, Tyreek Hill and McCaffrey not being in the conversation, these should just rename the MVP award like the best quarterback award, and the offensive player the best skill position player. And then same thing with defenders, right? It's like, oh, defenders, they're not going to win MVP, because they've got their own award. And so it's like, just MVP goes to quarterback, offensive player of the year goes to a skill position, and, the defensive guys, get their own award. It's kind of dumb at this point. Yeah.
100%.
But this MVP race does lead into our trivia question for this week, or as I like to call it, Luke Learns. We went a little difficult last week with Major Applewhite. If you're not familiar with him, that would have been a difficult one. But here's this week's trivia question. So as we discussed, Dak Prescott is the favorite to win NFL MVP. Since the Associated Press began voting on this award in 1957, only one Dallas Cowboy has ever won the MVP since 1957. Can you name that player?
Wow. I was reading the retired numbers in the stadium last night. So I will go with Roger Auerbach.
Well, it's Staubach, Roger Staubach.
Staubach. Okay. Yeah.
You might be kind of far from that retired number. No, that is not the answer. The answer is Emmitt Smith.
Oh, that's easy.
I wanted to make sure I threw the 1957 to make you think it could have gone back that far, but no. The answer was I thought you were going to go either Emmitt Smith or Troy Aikman,
Aikman,
but
yeah.
no. Yeah, Emmitt Smith in 1993 is currently the only Dallas Cowboy to have won the
Wow.
NFL MVP.
Aikman never won that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a different game. It was a different game. Back in the 90s, way more runs than passes you see these days. So thank you for playing along. We will try to get them next time. But for now, it is time to get into a little stake or swap. First up, we will be talking about another NFL award, this time Coach of the Year. Sean Payton is currently 16-1 to win Coach of the Year at BetMGM. I will go first. I am staking the Broncos head coach, Sean Payton, to win Coach of the Year. The Broncos' current odds to make the playoffs is plus 135, which, if I would have told you that after the first 6 weeks of the season, you would have said that's insane. The Broncos' point differential this year is minus 22. However, if you remove that 70-20 Dolphins loss, that's plus 28. And as you know, I like to look at point differential, and you want to talk about outliers. I think that 50-point loss was the outliers of outliers against the Dolphins. They've won 6 of their last 7 games. The remaining schedule is at Detroit, home versus the Patriots, home versus the Chargers, and at the Raiders. Point being is I think they have a very decent shot to win 3 of those 4 games. Dan Campbell and D'Amico Ryans, I think their stock is trending down. I mean, no one's really talking about how bad the Texans were on Sunday against the Jets. I mean, CJ Stroud didn't even go for 100 yards passing. And then just, I'm not necessarily saying that Peyton is going to win it, but I could definitely see his odds dropping into the single digits in the next couple of weeks. I think he could be right in that mix. I also think LaFleur for the Packers could be in that mix. And right now, McDaniel's the favorite. But I really think it's going to be one of these teams that did not make the playoffs or did not have high expectations. So 16-1 on Sean Payton, I am staking.
Yeah, I mean, that's great value. On both Sean Payton and Matt LaFleur. Good point on him being 14-1. They've had such a turnaround, the Packers have. I will swap Sean Payton because I just think D'Amico Ryan's going to win this thing. They've lost 1 game, to say that D'Amico's trending down. I'm not sure about that. They obviously look terrible against the Jets in really bad weather. And they beat the Broncos the week before that, the Texans did. So yeah, we talked about Dan Campbell a ton. Like, I just think you should have gave it to him last year, but maybe the voters will disagree with me. And I just think D'Amico Ryans is doing more than Mike McDaniel is with his given roster. And to me, obviously I'm not a voter, but that's how Coach of the Year should be measured. Who's doing the best relative to the roster they were given. So yeah, I'd be staking D'Amico still, and I'll swap Sean Payton. But I agree there's value there, and I also agree there's value in Matt LaFleur at 14-1.
Yeah. This award has gone from you got to win your division to just got to make the playoffs. And when I say D'Amico's stock is trading down, I kind of think just the Texan stock is trading down. And I could see them having peaked already this season and missed the playoffs. And obviously, Houston has the tiebreaker over Denver.
I can't believe Indy's 7-6. It's stunning with Gardner Minshew leading the charge. If that hasn't been talked about enough, like that is wild what they're doing. Shane Steichen, hell of a job.
All right, and then switching sports, going to talk a little college basketball, which we have not gotten into much this season so far, but going to talk about the Baylor Bears, currently 25-1 at DraftKings. Luke, you can go first. Are you staking or swapping Baylor?
Yeah, so nothing to do with my Bears hat, even though the Bears had a gigantic win against Detroit. Going to stake the Baylor Bears. You can find them at 25-1 at DraftKings. They're 20-1 at FanDuel. Had dinner with a Baylor buddy over the weekend, and Andrew Woodward, he's a venture capitalist, and he's went to Baylor, and he's like, this is the deepest team we've ever had. They're undefeated still. I did not realize that their head coach, we went to the national championship when Baylor just destroyed Gonzaga in Indianapolis. I didn't realize Baylor's head coach, Scott Drew, is the brother of Bryce Drew, who hit the shot at Valparaiso, that famous college basketball shot in March Madness, like one of the biggest upsets ever. Didn't know that. So that's crazy. That was a fun fact. That was while I was researching Baylor. But yeah, national championship 3 years ago. Apparently the deepest team they've ever had. They are 5th in points per game, 6th in field goal percentage, and 2nd in 3-point percentage. It seems really good. Undefeated. Other teams at the top, of course, are Wildcats. We're selling Arizona tickets on PropSwap at 10-1 on the Wildcats. Like, they're good. We're a good team, but 10-1 in December is crazy. So if you can get Baylor at 25-1, then they're not. Arizona is not 2.5 times better than Baylor.
All right. I will swap Baylor. Color be skeptical that a Baylor alum is saying that they've got a really good team.
Sure.
You mentioned those points. How good they are offensively. Well, that could be the fact that they just haven't really played a lot of good teams. I mean, they put up 108 against Nichols, 91 against Northwestern State. They've got some games against Gardner Webb and John Brown.
Sure.
I thought that was a receiver, not a school. So they have not got. My point though is that they have not gotten into the Big 12 schedule. In fact, they've got Michigan State and Duke coming up. Obviously, both those teams are actually having a down year, but the Big 12 is loaded. You've got obviously teams like Kansas, Houston, Oklahoma, BYU is ranked, Texas is ranked, and so my point here though is that. I think they're going to suffer some losses in conference. Now, I'm not saying they couldn't do something in the tournament, but in terms of when to get in on Baylor, I think unless I could be proven wrong, but I think that they're going to start playing some of this good competition and get some losses, and then you can get even a better number later this season on Baylor. But even that being said, yes, we were in the house for them winning that championship. But other than that, I've never been a huge Scott Drew fan in the tournament. Last year, they were a second round exit. Year before that, a second round exit. And that was after winning the Big 12. Before that, they won it. Before that was COVID. And then before that, another second round exit. So, the championship, I think, was the exception, not the rule. And more times than not, Baylor under Scott Drew has early exits in the tournament when they're good. So I'm not a huge. I think there's a lot of other Big 12 schools that I like that I think will do well. So, but yeah, we will more obviously college basketball talk to come as the season and conference play gets underway. But for now, that will do it for this week's episode of the PropSwap podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe, leave a rating, and we will talk to you next week.